finance.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Financial Independence Podcast, the podcast where I normally interview people to find out how they achieved financial independence, but today is different. Today, the tables have been turned. You'll remember that I interviewed Mr. and Mrs. 1500 from 1500days.com at last year's FinCon conference, which was held in Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, this year's FinCon was in San Diego, California, and Mr. 1500 emailed me beforehand and said, hey, why don't I interview you for your own podcast? So since I had so much fun with those guys last year, I, of course, said yes. And this year's was even more fun because I didn't have to think of any questions to ask or anything. So this is Mr. and Mrs. 1500 from 1500days.com interviewing me, the Mad Fientist. Hope you enjoyed. Live from the Trade King studio at FinCon 2016, this is the Financial Independence Podcast. And this one is a different one. I'm actually not going to be interviewing anyone today. I'm being interviewed by two of my favorite people of all time, Mr. and Mrs. 1500 from 1500days.com.
Woo, woo. Thank you, Brandon.
So I have no idea what you have planned, so I am just going to turn it over and hope for the best.
Okay, first I have to thank the Mad Fientist for this opportunity. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and before we get into it, I have a little story I have to tell. Let's take a little trip down memory lane. Okay, so we're recording this right now at the FinCon conference, and it's 2016. My first conference was back in 2013, and it was right after I had started blogging, so I'm an introvert. I'm absolutely terrified of what I'm doing right now, actually. And that first conference, they had a big party the first night, so I'm standing there like a deer in headlights. I just started blogging and not talking to anyone. I was holding on to my beer for dear life, just kind of looking at the ground. And this guy comes up to me, looks at my tag, and says, oh, hey, I've read your blog before. And I'm like, who's that guy? I have no idea who this person is. So I look at his tag, and I see it's the Mad Fientist. I'm like, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. I felt like a teenage girl, and Miley Cyrus or whomever teenage girls pay attention to would just come up to me. So at that point, I kind of felt a slight bit of validation, and it was one of the inflection points of my blogging career. And so that was wonderful. And
the feeling was mutual, absolutely.
I don't know about that, but anyway, I calmed down a little bit after that. I still had to drink lots of beer. So anyway, last year, I had the pleasure of the Mad Fientist interviewing Mrs. 1500 and I was equally terrified. But again, that was another big stepping stone for our blog career. And ever since then, the thought that's been in my mind is the Mad Fientist gets to have all this fun up on stage interrogating people, and what I've wanted to do is point the microphone back at him, and today we have the chance, so
I am terrified.
I'm going to stop talking now and start asking the Mad Fientist questions. So the first thing I really want to know, pre-Mad Fientist, what was your upbringing like? You're obviously, I know that you're an engineer, and you have the same mindset, but what was your childhood like? Were you brought up to be frugal, or how did you become to be who you are?
Yeah, I don't know what caused it. My brother's not like I am, but it was definitely ever since I was a little kid. I just loved money. I always wanted money. I always wanted to have a portfolio to manage someday and invest it. My dad bought me 5 shares of stock when I was really small. I can't remember when. It was when you still looked in a newspaper to see what the stock price was every day. So he bought me 5 shares, and every morning I would look in the paper and check out the shares. And yeah, my family has tons of different stories about, like, you know, keeping me busy all day by throwing coins in the pool secretly, and then I'd spend all day like going in the deep end and almost drowning to pick up a quarter at the bottom of the pool. So yeah, I don't know why, but yeah, money has always been a big thing. And yeah, I've always liked math, and I think the engineering mind was always there, and so yeah, I think it was from day one, and I don't know where it came from because my brother's not like that. He's good with money, and I actually want to get him on the show to talk to him about it because he's doing a very different path, but he's still really good with money. But yeah, it's definitely inbuilt in my body somehow.
Cool. Do you remember what those first 5 shares of stock were? And,
yeah,
do you still hold them to this day? Or?
Yes, I do, and they're the most annoying things in the world because I have to claim them. I have to record my dividends on my tax return, and it's like $2 and like 75 cents. I think I'm up to $4 a year now, which is great. So, and I can't find the shares because they're actual physical shares back in the day, and I can't figure out how to sell them. So, but yeah, it was Pepsi, Wendy's, Disney, and ADP. So I think it was actually 4 shares, and there may have been another fifth, but I can't remember. So ADP was the company my dad worked for. So
okay, cool.
And I still own one of them. I was able to sell because some company contacted me and were like, "Do you want to offload these since you only have 2?" And I think it was Disney. They're like tired of sending you checks for $2, so do you want to just sell them? And I was like, yes.
Nice. So moving on, what was your first real job, and what age were you when you started working?
My first real job, I guess, was probably Jersey Mike's Subs when I was 15. I may have had a restaurant job before then, but I think it was probably Jersey Mike's Subs. And so 15 years old, and then I was manager by 16, so I had keys to the store. Which wasn't probably a good idea because we would sometimes open the shop up at like midnight after being out drinking and things, and then make like a number 17 Philly cheesesteak and then clean the grill and then go home. So, but I never burned down the place. So yeah, that was probably my first real job.
Success.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. So, what was your inspiration for the Mad Fientist? What caused you to start Mad Fientist?
Yeah, so I'm ashamed to admit it, but like I'm a really terrible computer person. Like I got into computer programming because I liked math and was good at math. And we got a FedEx truck coming. Sorry. So I never was like really a big computer geek. So I didn't even know what a blog was until I stumbled upon GetRichSlowly.org. And that's JD Roth's site, and he's been on the show before, and he's actually at this conference, so I'll see if I spot him walking by. But so I didn't really actually know what a blog was, and then I saw that, and I was like, that's what I'm doing, and I just want to get rich slowly. There's no, like, I don't want to buy a fancy house or a car. I just want to have a big portfolio and be wealthy one day, but I want to do it properly. And then from there, I found earlyretirementextreme.com, and then that changed the game because that was like, I didn't know you could do that, but now that's exactly what I'm saving for. So when I started getting real into it, like just like super pumped on it, and I was like, I know I can get there quicker if I do a lot more research and like figure out strategies to like, save better or save more, invest better. At the time, I thought it was going to be invest better, but it's turned out that investing is quite easy with index funds. So it evolved into like tax optimization and things like that. So I was like, I know I won't do that research unless I have some sort of external motivation to do it. So I was like, I'll start a blog, I'll write about it, and I'll have to, I think teaching people is the best way to learn something yourself. So that was the main source of inspiration. And then I also started this podcast at the same time, and I was like, cool, I can just call all these cool people that have already done it and get all their tips and figure out how to get there quicker. So it was all selfish.
Nice. Ed, you mentioned the strategies, and that's probably my favorite part about your blog. The question I probably get most often on my blog is, you talk about how much you love your 401k, but you can't get to it till 59 and a half. And I just heard this same question come up in a session yesterday. I think I looked at you and pointed to the Mad Fientist, like the Mad Fientist needs to be on stage, because there is all these strategies, and they're not, there's nothing wrong with them. They're perfectly legal. They're wonderful. So
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know about any of these until I saw your guest post on Jim Collins. And
oh, cool.
So my question was, do you enjoy, I know you said you did it because this forces you to talk about them, but it seems like you might actually enjoy reading IRS documents.
No, I definitely don't. And that's the thing, like, that's the only reason I was able to do it was because it was purely selfish reason. So like a lot of people ask me to like write about 529 plans or stuff for kids, and I just don't, because I don't have kids, so I don't find it interesting. So reading the tax documentation would be just a big slog, so that's why I don't do it.
Okay, so could you cut that part out of the podcast? Because I tell everybody, go to the Mad Fientist, because he takes all these really boring government documents and he translates them into English. So if you could just take that out so people don't know that I'm lying to them, that'd be great.
Well, I do that, but yeah, I just don't love it.
There are some documents that you have slogged through that are interesting to you. Like, you don't have kids, so you didn't do the kid part.
Yeah.
Well, I can find that information someplace else, or
Right.
just not know that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to go through those documents. But
No, once I get into it, I get really, really into it.
yeah,
It's like,
you can get a lot of tips that you would never, ever, ever read, because you're not going to read those 9-inch thick documents, and Mad Fientist reads them for you.
Yeah.
So take that part of the podcast out, please.
I will.
Edit that.
Okay, so one of the posts I enjoyed most and was most interested in talking to you about was your your Dartmouth master's degree. So here you are, a guy that's planning to retire early, and yet you decide to get a master's degree from a Ivy League university. I thought you were. I never thought you were actually mad until I read that. So, are you actually mad? Why did you go back to Dartmouth for a master's degree?
I was completely mad. So, whenever I see something's free, I'm like, well, I have to do that. That's amazing. Like, I had always wanted to go back to school at some point. Like, I wanted to try graduate school. And then we moved to Vermont, and we moved really close to Dartmouth, actually. And I was like, wow, this would be great. I wonder if they give employees a way to get a free degree if after working for so many years or something. So I looked into it, and it was the case. So I was like, all right, great. I'm going to apply for a job so I can get a free master's degree. And then I went there, and I had to work for a year before I was able to get it, or before I was able to start the program. But then I was like, why isn't everybody doing this? This is like, you can get a free Ivy League degree. Why is everyone not taking advantage of this? And then it was like 2 weeks into the program, and I was like completely stressed out with all the work I had to do on top of my full-time job. And then the Mad Fientist was kicking off at the same time. And I was like, oh, this is why nobody is doing this, because yes, it's free, but my life was hell for like 2 years. So yeah, it was worth it now that it's done, but it was not the most fun thing, especially because like at the time I was so focused on financial independence that I would have rather actually been reading those tax documents that we talked about earlier than reading whatever I was assigned. So
sure. Okay, so next I want to talk about the financial independence movement, and we've had a lot of steam lately. I've noticed that Mad Fientist has been on the front of Yahoo not once but twice in the past month. What was that like?
Well, you know just as well as I do, because you guys were the ones that led the way. So Mr. and Mrs. 1500 smiling faces were looking back at me at yahoo.com a week before it happened to me. So I was emailing you guys and congratulating you, and then somehow it happened at the exact same a week later. And so yeah, it was very. I would have freaked out had I still been working, but it was a good timing in that I wasn't working anymore, so I wasn't concerned with my bosses finding out, which was the main thing that I was worried about. But a lot of friends did that I didn't think would see it, and so my sort of Mad Fientist secret life came out then. But I know it was probably a lot more scary for you guys because you were still working and your bosses found out. So could you tell that story, because it's amazing.
Yeah, we were on Yahoo once, and it was kind of against our will. We were on a podcast, the Farnoosh Torabi podcast, and then that made its way into CNBC, and that eventually made its way into the front page of Yahoo. So we had no idea this was coming. I look at my blog one day, and I see it's got like way more hits than it usually does, way more than the 3 hits I normally get on a day. So I uttered a couple profanities that aren't fit for the Mad Fientist podcast, so you can imagine what they were. And that happened on Monday, so... my whole blog, the whole point of my blog is about quitting work, so I really hoped my work wouldn't find out, but I thought they eventually would, and it turned out they did. So that happened on Monday, and I got all the way to Thursday morning without anyone saying a thing, and then I log into my email, and the subject line of one of the emails says, "Carl, you're on Yahoo," and my heart just sank. I'm like,
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I'm like, the gig is up. It's all over. This is my last day of work, which would have been okay, too, because... I have enough now, so it would have shoved me over the cliff that it's hard to push myself over. But the surprising thing was, and what happened was the person who found the article sent it just to me and to the most talkative person on the team, the most gossipy person on the team. So within about 3 seconds of that, all of my work knew. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that none of them cared. I've got this blog about quitting my job, and none of the people at my job cared about it at all. So
that's great.
Yeah, life went on as normal. It was very strange and a bit surreal. So it's a relief to have it out in the open now. Finally,
it is. I actually felt the same, and it's nice that some of my good friends now know, because it's sort of. I didn't tell them at the beginning because I thought nobody would ever find out about it, and then it's sort of grown into this crazy thing, and now it feels weird telling them about it now, but at least I'm not waiting any longer.
Okay, I'd like to talk about your retired life now. You just left your job a couple months ago, right? What was that like, and how's life been since then?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty interesting transition. So yeah, August 1st was my last day, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I freaked out a bit the first day, because I just realized what just happened, and I don't think I ever really thought about it as much as I should have. Like, it's a huge thing. And then I was like, wow, I don't have a job anymore. This is crazy. And had I not had like Mad Fientist project to work on, I would have, I think I would have really freaked out, because trying to start something new when you have all the time in the world would have been really difficult. So luckily I had like the Mad Fientist stuff to keep me busy. But then it was only after that first day that I sort of fell into a good routine. Oh, my voice is going. Sorry. That's always happens at these conferences. But yeah, so after the first day, I started like really getting into a nice routine. And really, it didn't feel too much different than work, which was pretty cool. That was also a good realization. It was like I'd worked myself into such a flexible, stress-free job situation with working remotely from Scotland that, retired life didn't seem too much different. But except I found myself waking up more excited every day, because I was excited about the projects that I was going to tackle, rather than just like, dreading what I was going to have to do. So
okay, and that's an awesome segue into what I'd like to talk about next. I'd like to read a couple quotes. The first one is, the biggest problem with ambition is that nothing you achieve ever feels like enough. And that's from the book Leap by Tess Vigeland. The next one of my favorites, is a perpetual holiday is a good working definition of hell. And that's from George Bernard Shaw. The next one is, I actually don't use the word retirement very often. Stopping work doesn't appeal to me. It was never about cutting the cord on work altogether. It's about having the power and the freedom to do what I want when I want, to work on the things that I want to work on, regardless of whether they pay or not. The final quote is, it's important to retire to something rather than from something. And those last two quotes are from the Mad Fientist. So my question for you is, I'll back up a second here. Mr. Money Mustache likes to talk about the early retirement, or the retirement police. Oh, you're retired, you don't have a job, and yet you're still working. And I can see where they might have a small point, but I want you to reconcile. How would you reconcile? What would you tell people who say, well, you quit your job, but you're still working, you're full of crap?
Yeah, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I've learned to not care what other people say, because as you know from our Yahoo exposures recently, that there's a lot of negativity and lots of people saying crazy things. So yeah, that's why I try not to use the word early retirement, the words early retirement. I instead do financial independence. Means so much more to me, because that's exactly what it is for me. It's not about stopping work, and it's not about not doing anything else productive. It's being able to choose the productive things that I pursue, regardless of whether there's a monetary reward. So
yeah, and I think that's absolutely the key. One thing I always tell people is your retirement is going to be an amplification of your free time. So if you spend nothing but eating donuts and watching reruns of I Love Lucy or whatever some retired people do, that's a recipe for disaster. You should never stop working. So
absolutely.
I really liked what you say. It's about doing the things that you love regardless of pay. And I think kind of the same for me. I write code, and I love writing code, so I might continue to do it. But the measure of my success won't be money. It'll be something else. It might be if anyone downloads my app. So
right,
yeah.
And that puts you into a really powerful position, because you can do things that other people can't do, because they need to have the income. So you can tackle these sort of projects that other people won't.
Sure. And it's very interesting. Another thing I'm sure you found, Mr. Money Mustache is a good example. These people become way more successful and monetarily successful, even though that wasn't their goal when they're retired. They're not trying for money, but somehow it works out.
Exactly.
That they end up financially more successful.
Absolutely.
So my MacBook froze up at the moment, so I'm going to go back to paper here for a second. Sometimes old technology works well. Okay, and my technician has just restored it. We don't have much time. That's why we're talking so fast, by the way.
Yeah, we have a very short amount of time, but it
Yeah.
is beautiful. We're sitting outside it. You'll see the pictures on the show. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. For anyone who doubts early retirement, look at the pictures, and you have nothing to say to us.
Yeah, it's Thursday at almost 11 o'clock in the morning, and we're out here in the beautiful San Diego sunshine.
Hanging out with friends
Life
and just
is
talking.
rough.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we've drunk a lot of beer. Life is very good right now. Unfortunately, it's too early to drink. Even we have limits. So.
It's noon somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
maybe after this is done. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple one more question, and then we'll get into some fast questions.
Ooh, nice.
So I know one of your big goals from retirement is travel plans. I'd like to hear more about that. Where are you going? Where you plan to go? What some of your favorite places are? And I hate when people ask me this during interviews, but I'm going to ask you this anyway, and you can punch me if you want to. Where do want to do in 5 years, 10 years, or do you not give a shit?
Okay. Well, yeah. So we're this is the start of a big trip, 3-month tripper all the way around the world, actually. So we flew into LA, and now we're in San Diego. We're going to head to Mexico on Sunday and spend about a month there. And then we're going to go down to Peru for about a week, and then Ecuador for just over a week, and then back up to the States for a bit, and then Japan for most of December, and then head back to Scotland in time for Christmas. So that's the travel plan, and then we're going to settle back in Scotland for a bit and try to get some productive stuff done that I've been wanting to work on. So.
It's a good thing you don't have a job. You don't have time to work.
Exactly. No, I know. It's. I feel busier than ever, which is great because it's all good stuff that I'm working on. So
that is awesome. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions now. Who inspires you?
Oh, everyone here that I'm friends with inspires me. They're all doing fantastic things and really helping a lot of people in the world. So yeah, and my family obviously inspires me a lot. My wife inspires me. She's over there. She's smiling at me in the sun. But yeah, no, I'm lucky that I can interact with such intelligent and motivating people. So every time I come to one of these things and chat to people like you guys, it's always I always feel really energized to keep doing what I'm doing and keep putting stuff out in the world. So
cool. What worries or keeps you up at night? What worries you?
I am very worry-free.
I want to know what drug he's on.
I know. We have. I get made fun of by my friends all the time because they're like, "You're never stressed about anything." Let's see if my wife can chime in on that one. You know better than me. Like I feel like I'm not worried all the time, but I'm sure I worry about some stuff. It's mostly optimization. Like if we plan something, it has to be the most optimized version. And if for some reason like a cheap flight doesn't fit into the schedule, I get freaked out about that and stressed. Yeah. And then. But yeah, relatively stress-free, which is good.
You know, that's the thing about an FI life. My wife and I have fights about how we pack our suitcase. So I roll my clothes, and she insists on doing something else that's far less optimal, and you have to waste more space. So yeah,
folding them like normal people.
I roll them too.
Yeah. Pro tip: roll your clothes. It's better. They don't wrinkle either.
It is.
Okay. Yeah. Can you throw out some of your favorite books? They could be financial or otherwise.
Yeah. So the book that had the biggest impact on my sort of outlook was How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And I think that's, even though it's not a financial book, it's an amazing book for getting the sort of mindset that you need to do something crazy like pursue or like a financial independence or early retirement, because it just sort of makes you realize that you are in complete control of your life, and everything that you think you need to do because of societal pressures or family pressures or, trying to impress other people, you just don't have to. You can build the life that you really want to live and not have to do what everyone else is doing. So yeah, that's my top one that I usually recommend to people, and it's not a financial one at all. So
okay, cool. I have a final question, and I'm going to go back into the suitcase and how you pack clothes. But Mad Fientist actually wrote about this, but I'm a wimp, and I'm actually too afraid to ask this. So I'm going to turn it over to my wife, who fears nothing, and she's going to ask the question. I apologize in advance. I take full blame for this question. Don't blame my wife.
In a famous post, you said, when talking about suitcases, my screen just went blank. I don't like it when clean clothes touch dirty clothes, touch clean clothes, but Jill is gross and doesn't mind. So first off, how dare you?
She is gross.
And second off, how long did you have to sleep on the couch?
Yeah, so that still grosses me out. So anytime we share a suitcase, it is like the biggest ordeal because I'm like, where's your dirty clothes? I don't want them touching my clean clothes. And so now that we have separate suitcases, which are backpacks, and I have a completely separate compartment at the bottom that was made for dirty clothes. So I'm obviously not the only person that doesn't like mixing them. But yeah, Jill, it's just like a free-for-all. She'll go for a run and she'll just like pile her running clothes in, and it's like, what are you doing? What's the point? You should just not wash your clothes ever. So
Jill's a delightful woman. You look at her and you never think, wow, she's dirty. I would never have a problem with my clothes, my clean clothes touching Jill's dirty clothes because she's not gross.
Right. Yeah.
So you were wrong.
Definitely. Well, yeah, definitely not gross, but yeah, yeah, her habit is gross.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to close with one thing. With my blog, I've often thought about writing about financial strategies and some of the stuff that the Mad Fientist writes about, but his stuff is so good, there's no need to. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, the thing is with investing, it's all long term. So some of his strategies might be super evident at first, but for example, he just wrote one about 401ks and whether it makes sense if you're going to retire early, the different withdrawal strategies, and even taking it and get the tax hit actually turns out working better than not contributing and doing it after tax. So his information is amazing. It should be required reading for anyone who's involved with anyone who does any kind of investing. So I love referring my readers to him because he's so thorough. His posts are good, and he's got these great visuals. So that's why I love the Mad Fientist. So thank you very much.
He should be required reading for everybody who doesn't invest too.
Oh, thank you very much. You guys are both fantastic. I can't believe you offered to do this. This has been so much more enjoyable and relaxing than it was when I interviewed you guys last year. I was so freaking out. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks. I can't wait to talk to you guys again.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.
Finance.